Welcome back, everybody. So this is a video going over section 9.9, day 1. This is a warm-up for today. If you haven't already done so, please submit your assignment and then pause here and pick up where you need to. All right. So completing the square, what we learned yesterday was there are going to be some weird things that happen, some things that you might need to do beforehand before you start actually completing the square. So let's first start off here. X squared plus 16x is equal to 92. X squared plus 16x is equal to 92. Now, first thing, is it all set up correctly? Yeah. Second thing, is there any A value? No. Okay, man, this is nice then. So we find our magic number. What is our magic number in this case? Well, half of 16 is 8. 8 squared is 64. 64 is the magic number. All right, so that gives me an x plus 8 squared. Remember, that's always that divided by 2. And then is equal to 156. Now, here's the weird part about this. Is 156 square rootable? I just made that up. Square rootable. It's not a perfect square. I mean, everything is square rootable. It just turns out if it's nice or not, right? So if I take the square root of 156, it comes out messy. So that means I'm going to have to do the radical answer and the decimal answer, right? This is that. So the radical answer, I'm going to have x plus 8 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 156. And then to get x completely alone, I just subtract the 8 over to the other side. Right? I go here and here, and I always put it before the plus or minus, so x is equal to negative 8 plus or minus the square root of 156. Please remember that that statement really means two different numbers. Negative 8 plus the square root of 156, negative 8 minus the square root of 156. So that's the radical answer. That's the rad answer. And then I take negative 8 plus the square root of 156. Whoop, got the 8. Okay. Negative 8 plus the square root of 156. And I get that. And then I do the same thing. But instead, I'm going to do a minus. Went too far. Minus. All right, those are my two answers there for this one. 4.49 and negative 20.49. Questions about that one? Questions? Any other questions about that one? Okay, let's take a look at the next one here. Now this one's a little weird because I have to move it around a little bit. Like, is it set up? Is step 1 done? No, I've got to move it around a little bit. I got to add the 24x. Oops. Got to add the 24x to the left side. And then I've got to subtract the 16 to the right side. So it should look like that. Now, am I ready to complete the square yet? What's stopping me? The 4. Let's divide through by 4. Everybody gets divided. Yeah, you get divided by 4. You get divided by 4. You get divided by 4. So I've got x squared plus 6x is equal to negative 4. Magic number? 9. So this gets me an x plus 3 squared is equal to 5. And I think we did this problem yesterday. Yeah. Was this an exact one? Yeah. Oh my gosh, look at that. X plus 3 is equal to plus or minus radical 5. Then we subtract the 3, negative 3, plus or minus radical 5. And then we take negative 3. Let me get this out of here. Negative 3 plus radical 5. And then negative 3 minus radical 5. Those are my two decimal answers. Questions about that? So for those problems, I will be giving you 2 sets of answer blanks. I'll tell you right now, there's 2 sets of answer blanks. Radical answer, then decimal answer. Okay? All right. Let's take a look at our homework. Ooh, we got the key up here. Again, this is just the answers. There's no work with these. So if you'd like to see any of these done, why am I doing this? Why am I just showing the answers? Because I've been having an issue where people are just copying down the work as we go along, as I like show the answer key for the homework and then submitting that as their own homework. So if I do this, and I am going through back, if somebody turns it in late, I will check and see if you put any work with it. If you're not, I am giving you zeros. So please check if you turn an assignment in late. I am checking to see if there is actually work to go along with it. So here are the answers for 21 to 26. Turns out there's only one answer for 26. You get a 0 on the right side, and then it turns into x minus 6 is equal to plus or minus 0, or just x minus 6 is equal to 0. So x is equal to 6. Negative 6 is equal to 6. Scrolling down here, and again, if you want to see any of the work, I can put it on a whiteboard here. That's completely fine. There is 24 to 30. Okay, anybody still need 24, 25, or 26? No. Okay. And there's then through the end for 38. That was the end, right? That was it, 38. All right, what questions do we need to see? Yeah. 24, sure. So x squared plus 6x is equal to 16. X squared plus 6x is equal to 16. All right, so I leave a little bit of room because I can complete the square right now, right as it is. So to complete the square, I take half of 6, which is 3, squared, which gives us 9. So that's going to be an x plus 3 squared is equal to 25. And then I square root the 25, and I get plus or minus 5. So x plus 3 is equal to plus or minus 5, and then I can subtract over the 3. So negative 3 plus or minus 5. So I go to my calculator, and I say negative 3 plus 5, and then negative 3 minus 5. And that's why you see the 2 in the negative 8. That make sense? What other questions on the homework do we need to see? Anything else? Again, ask questions where you need to, folks. Okay, yeah. 32. 32, sure. 30 as well, or number 32? 32. 32. Number 32, here's 2x squared plus 20x minus 10 equals 0. So first step, I've got to get my constant over to the other side. So I've got to add this 10 to the right. So that gets me a 2x squared plus 20x is equal to 10. You good so far? Now, got to get rid of the 2. Divided through. So that gives me an x squared plus 10x is equal to 5. You good so far? So my magic number, half of 10, is 5 squared, 25. So that gets me an x plus 5 squared is equal to 30. The problem is when I go to square root 30, I get a decimal. So this is an x plus 5 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 30. And now I subtract the 5 over to the other side. Negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 30. That's why I see my answer here is that. And then when I go to my calculator, I can get negative 5 plus the square root of 30. And then negative 5 minus the square root of 30. That's where I get those two answers. Make sense? Oh, I never changed the homework for today. All right, any other questions on the homework? Okay, let me hand out the guided notes for today. The last section out of chapter 9. We excited?
So,
I'm excited. Moving right along.
is it easier than what we've learned?
I don't know, not easier, I wouldn't say, just different. Because again, the end goal of these sections was to find the zeros of the function, right? Completing a square was just one way to find the zeros of the function, just like factoring was one way, just like solving by square roots was one way. Here's the issue though. What's the benefit of using completing the square as opposed to factoring? Can somebody tell me? What's the benefit of using completing the square?
You'll always find an answer.
You'll always find an answer. It'll never turn out to be like a, it might turn out to be a no solution, but it'll never turn out to be like a not factorable or something like that, or like it won't be able to be done or something like that, okay? The quadratic formula is another method where you will always get a solution. You'll always get something. Maybe it turns out that there will be no solution, but it's a method that will work every single time, okay? It's a method that no matter how you do it, it's gonna work. Now, the issue is it can be difficult. It can be difficult. Here is the reason why it can be difficult. Because the quadratic formula is hard to memorize. And I don't know, maybe it's not hard to memorize for some of you. Maybe it's easy to memorize. I don't know. For me, it wasn't that bad. But I got a good, I don't know, my brain just works that way. So it all depends on can you memorize the formula. How well can you memorize the formula? Here's what I will say to you. Every time you do this problem on your homework tonight, every time you do this type of problem on your homework tonight, I would write out the quadratic formula. Every single time. You want to know why? Because that's the way you memorize it. That's the way your brain remembers things. Repetition. The more you do something, the better you will remember it. So let's talk about the quadratic formula. Many quadratic equations can be solved easily by graphing, factoring, square roots, completing the square. Some cannot be solved by any of these methods, but you can always use the quadratic formula. Here is the quadratic formula. Now, A, B, and C all come from standard form. So it has to be set up in standard form, first off. That's the main thing, right at the beginning, right off the bat. It's got to be in standard form. AX squared plus BX plus C. And then you're going to write out, okay, what's my A value, what's my B value, what's my C value. That all you're going to do from that point is just plug the numbers into the equation. That's all you're really going to do. You're going to take the values of A, B, and C. You're going to plug it into the equation, and then you're going to solve. You're going to keep pushing through. You're going to keep reducing down until you get a certain number. Now, there's cool things in this formula. Let me show you something really quick. What do you guys see right there? Negative B over 2A. What was that?
Formula for A equals mx. First one.
Like that very first formula that we learned this chapter. The axis of symmetry. Right? That's the formula for the axis of symmetry. Now remember, on either side of the axis of symmetry, all points are equal on either side of the axis of symmetry, right? Because that's what a line of symmetry is. It's equidistant to each side. So what we have here is this axis of symmetry, and then we're adding and subtracting some value. Oops, that's not a marker. Some value, this square root of b squared minus 4ac. We're adding to the left and to the right of that axis of symmetry a certain number. And that's going to find the two zeros of the equation. Again, don't lose sight of the end goal. The end goal is to find where it crosses the x-axis. So, you want to know how I learned this when I was in high school? The opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. How goes the weasel? Yeah? How goes the weasel? The opposite of b. No? John, you want to say anything?
No.
Okay. I don't know. However you want to memorize, you got to memorize it. I just straight up negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. However you want to memorize it, you just have to memorize it. See, I get frustrated with people that are like, oh, I can't do this. You can't do it, or you just don't want to. Because if you memorizing something is just hard work. Memorizing something is just taking the time to memorize it. That's just all you got to do. You know, just like digging a hole, right? You just got to take the time to scoop the dirt out of the hole. You just got to take the time to memorize it. You just got to go through the process. You got to write it. I don't know however long it takes you. Write it 50 times if you need to. I guarantee if you write it 50 times, you're going to memorize it by the end of it. You're going to do that, Hayden? I see you. Pick up your pencil and paper. Give me a minute. All right, let's take a look here. X squared minus x minus 20. So the first thing I need to do is put it into standard form. Is this in standard form? Perfect. So I should be able to easily identify your A, B, and C values. A is what? B is -1, and C is -20. Just take into account the signs. A is 1, B is -1, and C is -20. Every time we do this type of problem on your homework tonight, every single time we do this, I want you listing off your A, B, and C values. And here's why. If you go to do this on your quiz and you accidentally forget your B value is negative and not positive, or whatever, you mess up a sign, you mess up something really simple, I'll know that. And then I'll run the number to see, okay, if that would have been your B value, did you get the right answer? And I'll give you some credit for it. So if you just accidentally set it up wrong, well, then I can give you a lot of credit based on what your answer would be in the end. So the formula is x equals, everybody write it out from scratch, negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. Go ahead and write it out for yourself. I strongly believe that one of the best ways to memorize something is to write it out. Muscle memory. And now what we're going to do is plug in my values. So I've got x equals the opposite of b. Now, b is -1, so what's that going to turn into? +1. Plus or minus. That plus or minus is always in there. Why? Because there's two different answers. They get two different solutions, two different places where across the x-axis. The square root of, now, -1 squared. I'm going to plug it in parentheses here just to kind of reinforce that -1 is going in there. Minus 4 times a value is 1 times c value is -20. All divided by 2 times a. Now, order of operations says the very first thing that you should do is your parentheses. Remember, we talked about at the beginning of this year, parentheses also include grouping symbols. And isn't a square root symbol a grouping symbol? So what should I do first? The stuff inside the square root. Stuff inside the house. That's where you should go first. So let's do that. Let's everybody get out your calculators right now, because I would hate for you to mess this up just because you don't know how to plug it in your calculator. So everybody, yes, I'd like everybody to go through and plug in everything underneath the square root. Don't plug in the square root, just the stuff underneath it. We'll learn later that that's actually called the discriminant. All right, so parenthesis, -1 squared, yes, including that parenthesis around the -1, minus 4 times 1 times, -20. And I got 81. If you didn't get 81, you plugged something in wrong. So I've got 1 plus or minus the square root of 81. Oops, I'm going to use blue. 1 plus or minus the square root of 81, all over 2 times 1 is just 2. All right, what is the square root of 81? 9. Excuse me. Excuse me, 9.
Yeah.
1 plus or minus 9 over 2. All right, now, at this point, since that came out to be a nice, round, perfect square, I can evaluate my two solutions. I can take 1 plus 9 over 2. So 10 over 2, which is 5. And then I can take 1 minus 9. Well, 1 minus 9 is negative 8 over 2, which is negative 4. And those are my two answers. X equals 5, x equals negative 4. Any questions about that? So let's do it again. This is your example B, right? Yeah, it's x squared plus 5x minus 4. Yep. Okay, first thing, is it set up in standard form? Okay, good. What's my A value? 6. What's B? 5. And what's C? Negative 4. All right, everybody, right now, write out the quadratic formula with the letters. X equals negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC, all divided by 2A. Now we plug in all of those numbers. So that's going to get me, B was positive 5, so it's going to be negative 5, plus or minus the square root of 5 squared minus 4 times 6 times negative 4, all divided by 2 times 6. Remember, order of operation says, go in house, in the radical, in the square root symbol. So I take 5 squared minus 4 times 6 times negative 4. 121. X equals negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 121. Oops, 121. All over, and then 2 times 6 is 12. You know what's a very common mistake? You know how I keep saying all over? The reason I keep saying that is because one of the most common mistakes is to put that 12 just underneath the radical. Does it go only underneath the radical? No, it goes over the whole thing. It goes under the whole. Yeah.
For your equation on the far right,
Yep.
Is it just B minus 4? Go over right. No. Okay. Yeah, right there.
Thank you. No, that's a 6.
You just take out the parentheses.
That's a 6.
Like when I left the parentheses and I put around 6 and 4, you just.
I like to put each one in their own parentheses to remind me that it's 1.
I got like a 13 here.
A what?
What did you say?
Syntax. Say, did you call it a satanic
I
error?
think I did.
Like the devil is going through your calculator.
Are you recording still?
Yeah. I got it. Did it come like the all 6s or something like that? Like,
And then negative 4, is that right? Oh, I got it. There, right there.
I got a satanic error. I'm sorry, I'm not making fun of
What is
syntax.
syntax?
Syntax.
I usually
All right, we got negative 5. And then what is the square root of 121? 11. All over 12. So now that it came out nice, I can take negative 5 plus 11. So 6 over 12, which is 0.5 or 1/2. And then I can take negative 5 minus 11. Negative 16 over 12, which is negative 1.3. Questions about that? Okay, let's do it again. 5x plus 2 is equal to 3x squared. Okay, what's the issue with this one? It's not in standard form. What would you guys like to do? Would you guys like to subtract the 3x squared over?
Yes.
Or subtract the 5x and the 2? Subtract the 3x? Okay, that's fine. I really don't care. You know how I said before, I was like, oh, I like to keep things positive. It doesn't matter with the quadratic formula, because you're going to plug it into the formula anyway. It doesn't matter. Okay. With factoring, it mattered. But this, whatever. Negative 3x squared plus 5x plus 2. You'll get the same answer in the end anyway. All right, now it's set up. A value is negative 3. B value is positive 5. C value is 2. See, if you had gotten things over to the other side, the A value would have been 3, the B value would have been negative 5, the C value would have been negative 2. It would have worked. It would have come out in the end.
You don't distribute the negative on these, do you?
What do you mean? Where? Which
Like,
negative?
Give it to, in front of the 3.
No, you don't.
It would turn
That's
into
just-
positive in the equation.
It's just stuck with the. What do you mean? What would turn positive in the equation?
But since the formula is like negative b.
Negative B,
Oh, negative. Okay.
not negative A. But if there was a negative and then a negative here, it would turn positive.
Okay.
So let's write it out from scratch. Negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC, all divided by 2A. All right, so it's x equals. We had positive 5, so it's negative 5. B squared, so 5 squared minus 4 times negative 3 times positive 2. All divided by 2 times negative 3. Still done? I'll take it. All right, now let's plug it in here. Go inside the house. 5 squared minus 4 times negative 3 times 2. Everybody look at my calculator. That's the way it should look. And I get 49. Negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 49 all over negative 6. 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. What is the square root of 49? 7. So it's x equals negative 5 plus or minus 7 over negative 6. All right, so let's evaluate the plus or minus now. Negative 5 plus 7, which is just 2. Yeah, that's not 12. It's 2. Over negative 6, which is negative 1/3, so negative 0.3. And then we have negative 5 minus 7, and negative 12 over negative 6, which is just positive 2. So positive 2 and negative 0.3 repeating. Okay, let's take a look at D. All right, let's take a look here. Best route to take, I think, would probably just be to add the 9x over to the left side and reorder it a little bit. So I'm going to bring this negative 5x squared all the way to the left. And then when I add this 9x, that's going to be plus 9x plus 2. Again, it doesn't matter that things are negative and positive. It's going to come out in the wash anyway. Doesn't matter. A is -5, B is 9, C is 2. All right, let's write it out from scratch. X equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. It's kind of how goes we go. Kind of hesitated there. Suspense. Okay. Now let's plug it in. The opposite of b. So it was positive 9, so -9. Plus or minus the square root of, so it's got b squared minus 4ac, right? So 9 squared minus 4 times -5 times +2. All divided by 2 times -5. All right, so that'll get me -9 plus or minus. Let's figure out what goes underneath the radical. 9 squared minus 4 times -5 times +2. Look at that, 121. Did we just have 121? Isn't that 11? So this is -9 plus or minus 11 all over -10. -9 plus 11 is 2 over -10. So that's 1/5, I think, point 2, -0.2. And then my other is -9 minus 11. So -20 over -10. So +2. That's right down. Neat. Thanks, bud. That's true. I would have just said it's on plan. Hey. Oh, it's funny. There's 2 more problems. We got 3 minutes.
Don't worry about it.
2 minutes.
We got this.
We'll do it
If warm up tomorrow. Hold on. I'm not sure if there's any radical answers and decimal answers on this. If it's a radical answer, you leave it as a radical. Right where you would go if it was not a perfect square, like that was 121. If it's a radical answer, you would go to square root of 121 and turn it into a decimal. That piece, the step before that, that's the radical answer, and then when you put it into a decimal, that's your decimal answer. Just like we did in completing the square. Not sure what those back ones turned out like.
They were just like in the
And if it turned out where you were going to try to square root a negative, what would happen? No solution, right? So those are the only weird things that could happen. We'll pick up that tomorrow. If we need to.
Satanic error.
Satanic error. I can't believe that. That's funny.